In 1999, two graduate students walked into a major tech company's headquarters and offered to sell their entire search engine. The price? $750,000. The CEO looked at what they'd built and said no. That company is now worth $2 trillion. The one that turned them down, it no longer exists. To understand what happened, you have to go back to the internet as it was in 1999, not the internet you know now. This was the internet before Google Maps, before Gmail, before streaming, before smartphones. The internet was young, messy, and enormously exciting, and almost nobody understood what it would become. At the time, one of the most powerful companies on the web wasn't Amazon. It wasn't Yahoo. It was a company called Excite. Excite wasn't just a search engine. It was a portal, a destination, a homepage for millions of Americans every single morning. At its peak, Excite had over 30 million users. Its parent company, At Home Network, was valued at nearly $7 billion. Excite had money, scale, and, they believed, a clear vision for what the internet should be. Their CEO was a man named George Bell, smart, experienced, and running what looked at the time like one of the most important companies on the web. And in the summer of 1999, two Stanford PhD students came to him with a proposition. Here's what you need to understand about how Excite, and almost every major internet company in 1999, made money. The model was called the portal strategy. And the logic was simple. The longer you kept a user on your site, the more ads you could show them. More ads meant more revenue. More revenue meant higher valuation. Higher valuation meant more investment. It was the same logic that television had used for decades. You don't want the viewer to change the channel. You want them glued to the screen. So Excite built everything with one goal: make users stay. News, weather, sports, stock prices, horoscopes, email, chat rooms, shopping, travel. All of it under one roof, branded as Excite. The idea was that if a user could do everything inside Excite.com, they would never need to leave. Search was just one small part of that strategy. And here's the thing. Search, to Excite, was almost a necessary evil. You needed it because users expected it. But a really good search engine? That was actually dangerous. A really good search engine sent users away faster, away from the portal, away from the ads, away from everything Excite was built on. That wasn't a bug in Excite's thinking. It was a feature. A search engine that worked too well was a threat to the entire business model. And that belief, that logic, is exactly why what happened next was possible. Larry Page and Sergey Brin were PhD students at Stanford when they started working on a search engine they initially called Backrub. The name didn't last. The technology did. Most search engines in 1997 and 1998 found pages based on how many times a word appeared on that page. Simple, mechanical, easy to game. Page and Brin had a different idea. They thought about how academics measure the importance of a research paper, by how many other papers cited. The more citations, the more credible the source. They applied that same logic to the web. A page that hundreds of other pages linked to must be more important than one nobody linked to. They called the system PageRank. The results were dramatically better, noticeably, obviously better, even to a casual user. And the design reflected the philosophy. No news, no weather, no horoscopes, no portal, just a search bar and a promise. Ask us anything, and we'll send you exactly where you need to go. Google wanted users to leave. The faster they left, satisfied, the better Google looked. The more they'd come back next time they needed to search. It was a completely different bet on what the internet could be. And by 1999, word had spread in Silicon Valley. Google's results were better, much better, which is exactly when Brin and Page started thinking maybe it was time to sell. Larry Page and Sergey Brin didn't start Google because they wanted to build a search empire. At least, not initially. They were PhD students. They had a dissertation to finish, and the server infrastructure they'd built in their dorm, running on borrowed hard drives and custom Lego-mounted racks, was consuming enormous bandwidth from Stanford's network. They needed money, they needed a buyer, and they figured the best buyers were the companies already in the search business. They went to Yahoo first. Yahoo passed. They didn't want Google distracting users away from Yahoo's portal. Sound familiar? AltaVista, then owned by Compaq, passed too. Then they went to Excite. The initial ask was $1 million. George Bell, Excite's CEO, was interested enough to take the meeting seriously. And according to multiple accounts reported in books including Ken Auletta's Googled and Stephen Levy's In the Plex, negotiations began. Brin and Page dropped the price, $750,000. To put that in perspective, in 1999, Excite's parent company was valued at nearly $7 billion. They were spending millions on marketing, on acquisitions, on infrastructure. They had a deal to deploy high-speed internet into millions of American homes. $750,000 was, relative to Excite's scale, almost nothing. It was a rounding error in their annual marketing budget. And there was a champion for the deal inside Excite. A senior engineer named Vinod Khosla, actually one of Excite's investors, reportedly pushed hard for Bell to do it. He thought Google was the real thing. Bell wasn't so sure. According to accounts later reported by journalists and former insiders, Bell did something unusual during his evaluation of Google. He actually tested it. He ran some searches, and the results that came back were, by any measure, better than Excite's. That should have been the moment Bell said yes. Instead, it was the moment he said no. Here's where this story gets genuinely fascinating, because George Bell wasn't being stupid. He was being rational, he was being strategically consistent, and he was protecting something he genuinely believed in. Bell's objection to Google wasn't that it was bad. His objection was that it was too good. According to accounts from people involved in those discussions, including a recollection from Vinod Khosla reported in multiple tech histories, Bell felt that Google's search results were sending users off Excite's platform too quickly. If Excite integrated Google's technology, users would find what they needed faster. They'd leave faster, they'd see fewer pages, they'd click fewer ads. By Excite's own business logic, users on site equals revenue. A better search engine meant less money. Bell reportedly told Khosla something along these lines. If Excite was going to use Google's search, Google would need to make its results worse, less accurate, to keep users on the portal longer. Brin and Page refused. Of course they refused. Their entire identity was built on the idea that search results should be as good as possible. Degrading accuracy wasn't a business compromise. It was a betrayal of the thing they'd spent years building, and so the deal collapsed. $750,000. Refused. Not because Excite was broke, not because the technology was unproven, not because the founders were unknown, but because Google worked too well for Excite's model. Bell went back to building the portal. Brin and Page went back to Stanford. And then something remarkable happened. Within months of the failed Excite negotiation, Brin and Page received a $100,000 check from Sun Microsystems co-founder Andy Bechtolsheim, written out to a company that didn't officially exist yet. That company was Google LLC. By the end of 1999, Google had raised nearly $25 million in venture funding from Sequoia Capital and Kleiner Perkins. Two of the most respected investment firms in Silicon Valley had bet on the two grad students Excite had turned down. In 2000, Google launched AdWords, a search-based advertising system that flipped the portal model completely upside down. The insight was devastating for portals. It turned out advertisers didn't actually want eyeballs browsing a homepage. They wanted intent. They wanted to reach a user at the exact moment that user was looking for something. Search-based advertising was more valuable per impression than any banner ad on any portal page. Excite's entire business model, keep users inside, show them ads, was competing against Google's model of let users find exactly what they want and show one perfectly targeted ad in the process. There was no contest. By 2001, Excite's parent company, At Home Network, had declared bankruptcy in what was at the time one of the largest corporate failures of the dot-com collapse. Excite itself was sold for a fraction of its former value. The brand limped on in various forms for years, a ghost of what it had been, and eventually faded into near total irrelevance. Meanwhile, Google, 2004 IPO, valued at $23 billion on day one. 2006, acquired YouTube for $1.65 billion. Today, Google's parent company, Alphabet, is worth approximately $2 trillion. The gap between those two numbers, between the price of the deal and what Google became, is arguably the single largest missed opportunity in the history of the internet. And here's the part that doesn't get said enough. Excite didn't lose because they were incompetent. They lost because they were rational within a model that was about to become obsolete. They optimized perfectly for the world they understood. They just couldn't see the world that was coming. Every industry has its Excite moment. A dominant player, comfortable in their model, confronted with something new, something that looks small or niche or even counterproductive to how they currently make money. And they have to make a decision. The tragedy of Excite isn't that George Bell was blind. He saw Google clearly. He tested it. He understood it. The tragedy is that he evaluated the future using the rules of the present. The portal model said, maximize time on site. Google's model said, maximize the value of each second. One of those was a business strategy. The other was a philosophy. And in the long run, philosophy tends to win. This is what Missed Billions is about. Not laughing at the companies that got it wrong, not celebrating the ones that got it right from a comfortable distance, but understanding, really understanding, why smart people make decisions that look catastrophic in hindsight. Because right now, somewhere, a George Bell is sitting in a meeting, looking at the next Google and thinking, this works too well for my model. The question isn't whether that moment is coming for your industry. The question is, will you recognize it when it does? If you want to see the next story, the next billion-dollar mistake, the next decision that changed an industry, subscribe. These stories don't run out. The internet is full of George